Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Super Micro Computer. It is time for another update, and today we decided to simplify things a bit on this chart, and we essentially are tracking a slightly different scenario, and this doesn't really change anything about the correction we are tracking in this entire movement, in this entire pattern, but it does allow us to have a simplified view, and it's a part of our efforts to make this analysis as accessible as possible. Now, to be clear, we do not have on the larger time frame a high probability structure anyway. There is a number of interpretations that could work out on this chart, and I wouldn't really care which scenario ends up unfolding at this point, whether this is a wave 4, whether the wave 3 would still be looking for even higher prices, where this would be instead an internal wave B. Doesn't really matter to me. I am essentially looking for this structure to provide more clarity. Yeah, I'm looking to find clarity within a smaller time frame, as the larger time frame structure is essentially quite awful. It doesn't provide any good indication of a high probability trade setup. Now, in this smaller time frame, we have identified already for a while that this would have been a wave A to the downside. We would have here a B wave up, and a C wave would be able to extend to even lower prices. This is our main scenario. We could technically extend to higher prices from the current levels, but we find that a less likely option outside of the green interpretation, as we have only managed to create here a 3-wave move to the upside, which isn't giving us any strong indications that yes, we would succeed in forming additional highs. Now, in this move to the downside, I am primarily focusing on the idea of a 3-wave pattern to have taken place here. Doesn't matter too much, could even count this as a 5-wave pattern, but I really wouldn't focus on that being a high driver for our analysis on this chart. And since we had this as a potential wave B top, we have been looking for a larger potential 5-wave structure to be unfolding to lower prices. And within this structure, we are at the moment looking for an impulse to be forming, and we had an attempt to create something potentially more bullish, an extension in a different interpretation of this green structure, where we started with a potential initial 5-wave move to the upside that ultimately failed to hold the relevant levels of support, and now we are testing its structural support within this region, which does seem to prove useful, but at the same time we can no longer look for direct continuation higher from these prices, and since we failed to hold here internal levels of support, this idea of the orange scenario has been actually taking over quite strongly. Now, within this structure, we have a much weaker support zone here in green compared to what we had within a smaller time frame here, but nonetheless we do find structural support from basically the entire region between $31 and $34 down to around $22.7, so basically all the way down to the 78.6% retracement. We do have some aid in creating more substantial reversals to higher prices. Nonetheless, if this is to build a wave 3 to the downside, we would still be looking for this orange interpretation to reach within this wave 3 the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, which is still decently far away at $18.7. Now, within this structure, we would actually have no issue reaching there, especially if we are to build an impulse within this area, as within the wave 3, within this larger wave 3, we are able to even look for an extension of this structure. We don't need to assume a bottom is in place even within its internal wave 3, where I would be able to track this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we would have an internal wave 3 complete, where we would need yet another wave 4 correction, and then another wave 5 before even looking for yet another larger wave 4 correction and another wave 5 to complete the structure. Now, I want to highlight that it is certainly possible to identify this as a wave 3 to be already complete. We do not need to form an extension within it, but unless we clearly get a suggestion that a bottom would be in place within this structure as a wave 3, we would still be able to look for extensions, and that would be still the case, especially as long as we don't form a reset for this current wave 4 correction. So if we actually manage to break here the $35 level, we would be rather suggested that this as a larger wave 3 would have already bottomed and that we could be looking for a larger wave 4 correction. We would even need to adjust our area of resistance slightly up, yeah, around to $40.4. Not a big difference, but ultimately I would still be waiting for evidence. I wouldn't be making any claims at this point, as this structure is actually a quite complex one. We do start to see a concentration of the price movement. It is getting restricted to lower highs and higher lows, and we will discuss more about that in a moment. But before we get into that, if you so far enjoyed the video, it would be greatly appreciated if you leave a like, and if you want to keep up to date with our analysis, subscribing might not be a bad idea, as we actually provide a lot of content on this channel. Yeah, we post multiple videos every single day, and if you want to support us directly in providing this content, you can check out our channel membership. And as a thank you for any of these actions, I would like to invite you to sign up to our channel newsletter, where you get access to our monthly top picks, where we identify for you high quality structures. Really not the case for this chart. Yeah, we don't necessarily have any strong indication for this chart being a high quality structure, but we do have a quite wide variety of opportunities there, and it is completely free. Now, getting back to this structure, we had a couple of ideas of how this movement could have unfolded, whether it was within a wave 4 correction or within something more bullish. So we had this idea of either an A, B, C structure for the orange interpretation, where this wave 4 would form a top, and then we were looking even for something potentially more bullish that could have provided us a trade setup opportunity, but clearly this didn't follow through. And while I technically could still be looking for a larger initial 5-wave move to the upside to still be forming as probably part of a leading diagonal, it's not going to be a focus for us. Yeah, the quality of this structure is quite poor, quite weak. It's not going to provide something of interest, at least not at the moment. And if this changes, we would be keen to bring it back. Yeah, we would like to have an opportunity on this chart as well. But as it stands right now, I'm waiting for more evidence that something more bullish would actually be going on. So within this pattern, we have a couple of options at the moment, and we have still held our area of support since building this as an A, B, C structure. But we have noticed that we have here continued with making lower highs and higher lows at the same time. So this is really suggesting to me that we might find ourselves within a triangle in this structure, a contracting Elliott Wave triangle, where we would be looking to head quite close already towards the apex, where typically, as we move closer and closer and the range of the price shrinks more, we would be looking, once we get a breakout, for a pretty substantial shoot. Now, it's not every single time the case that this happens, but it is a decently common expectation to have within this structure. And already, especially here on the top side, we have like what, 5 touch points, while on the bottom side we have like 3 touch points. Now, based on this initial structure to the upside, I would be even more inclined to believe that this is going to succeed in taking us to higher prices. So normally, within such a structure, within such a pattern, I would be looking even for this wave 4 to have potentially formed a triangle, and this is still technically a possibility, yeah? This entire wave 4 could be building here something like an A, B, C, D, E, where we would be able to look for direct continuation to lower prices from this wave E top. However, this structure looks slightly less than ideal due to the proportions of this initial movement to the upside. So what other options do we have here? Well, basically, we could be looking at this to still be a wave A, but not part of the triangle itself, yeah? This could be a wave A, we would have here a wave B triangle, and a wave C to the upside that would get a breakout from something like an A, B, C, D, E, yeah? Now, The thing is, this is never going to be a high probability structure, as the internal waves of a triangle are three-wave patterns, yeah? It will be decently unlikely to identify a reliable trade setup. Now, sure, if for example, we consider this to be a 5-wave move to the upside, that could work out as a potential internal 1-2 setup within a larger wave C, yeah? Remember, we could have been tracking this as an A, B, C, D, E, where this would be already part of the wave C to higher prices, but unfortunately, this is not the cleanest 5-wave move to the upside that we would be able to identify. And in the end, we will be looking for a similar area of support in either case, whether this is still part of a triangle, whether this is part of the wave C. To the upside, I would still focus here on the $30.5 level to form a reversal against. Now, some key ideas for this interpretation of a triangle, and let me even adjust this within this as a blue interpretation, where we would be looking still for continuation to higher prices, where in the orange interpretation, in this wave 4, we will assume a possible top to be in place here. Now, for some guidance for the idea of a triangle, and for that I would actually need to even label a triangle within this area, and we would have something like this possibly, and let me even shift this to blue, remove the larger interpretation, and have here this on a larger count. So, for example, if we are to take out the wave D top we have in this area, I would need to either get the breakout, so I would need the triangle to either be complete, yeah, to have here this as a wave B bottom and the wave C to already be unfolding, or I would need to have a reset of this as a wave D, yeah? If this is forming a contracting triangle, I cannot be looking for the wave D to be taken out and still have this as a wave E to the downside, yeah? Now, within this structure, we can already notice we have had quite deep retracements in both directions, and in fact, we nearly formed a lower low within this structure to the downside, which is why I want to highlight that technically it is possible for me to track this as an A, B, C, D, E, where the triangle bottom would have been here. I don't necessarily prefer this interpretation, but fortunately it doesn't really matter to us at this point whether this was the wave E bottom and this was a 1-2 setup where we would have had an extremely deep retracement, or whether we would have only here the wave E bottom and this would be a 1-2 setup where we would be tracking this internal area of support anyway for the indication of a failure to break out. Now at this point, for a better signal that the breakout is really occurring, that the triangle is either failing to even form or that the breakout is occurring, I would like to see the wave B top taken out. So I would like to see $33.9 taken out within a push to the upside, and if we do that and fail to create the next wave to the upside, I would have to assume a different pattern to have been going on, but at this point I don't believe it is time to future-proof our counts to give options for what happens if this or that, and I would focus on the levels of support, I would focus on the trend lines as well, and if we break below this wave C bottom, then again, we would either need to have a reset within this wave C or the breakthrough. And if we push even below that and still recover, we would have to track a different corrective pattern, yeah? Within the triangles, I believe we outlaid the rules quite nicely. If you'd like me to explain something better, let me know in the comments, as triangles are typically quite complex. And for now, there really isn't much else to add. We have the levels of support we want to see hold. So far, we only have a 3-wave move to the downside. Sure, if we go within a smaller time frame, we would probably prefer within this structure to get at least one more low before having a more substantial bottom in place. But I wouldn't overthink this. I don't see this as a trade setup, but rather as a path to a larger structure that could eventually prove to be a trade setup. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoy our content and you want to support us directly, don't forget to check out our channel membership. And other than that, let me know what else you would like me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.